Day 3 of Project Connect.
Yes.
Almost to the end. Phenomenal event.
Yes.
All 3 locations. We just kind of, as we're rounding home.
It's been a wonderful, exhausting whirlwind. We haven't done Project Connect for a couple of years. I feel like we had a really good rhythm going, and then the pandemic came along and we couldn't do it for a couple of years, and so this year it was a little a little harder to get things going because people hadn't done it for a while, and a lot of people have left their organizations, and there's new staff and all turnover and all that stuff. But I'm just so grateful. So many organizations, signed up to participate, and we've been able to have so many people come through who were excited to get connected with resources, especially in North Kitsap. When we did it in Poulsbo, there were folks up there who were like, we never get these resources because they just don't exist in Poulsbo, and same in South Kitsap. It's harder for people to get to the hubs where the resources exist. So it's really great to bring the services to the people where they are. So I'm super happy. It's been wonderful, and I'm exhausted.
How is it different now than it was pre-COVID?
You mean the Project Connect?
Available?
I'd say the Project Connect events are pretty, this year seems pretty similar to what it was before the pandemic. There's some new organizations or new services and programs being offered that weren't here before the pandemic, so that's wonderful to see. Some new organizations participating that we haven't had participate in the past, so that's been great. I think there's some that, we would have liked to participate and we didn't connect in time, or they didn't have the staff to do it. So my guess would be next year is going to be even bigger and better. You sort of look around and you're like, how could we fit any more organizations into this space?
Oh, especially yesterday. Yesterday was
packed. Yeah. But it really gives you this amazing sense of community. And the other thing that's this sort of secondary benefit of these Project Connect events is that all of the service providers get to know each other too, right? So they get to have more familiarity with what other services are available in the community for the people that they help, and so they can help make those referrals, and people can make connections and talk to each other. So even though the primary purpose is to connect people who need the services with services, the secondary benefit is that all of the service providers get to know each other a little bit better too.
And that was some of the feedback that I was going to give to you. Doing what I do, I know a lot of the agencies. I know a lot of people personally.
Yeah.
And I learned something new about every single agency.
Yes.
I didn't know George's House was the only place in the state that took, boys. There's just so many different things that folks are doing. But I've been working with you this whole time. I didn't know you did that. That's huge.
Yeah.
I didn't know Coffee Oak did all their same things in every location, and now they have a location in Tacoma.
Yeah.
I'm 2 blocks from you. How do I not
totally agree. So it's a great opportunity for everybody to learn more about each other and build those personal connections, right? I think I've always say, Kitsap's superpower is our partnerships, working together, and we're like just the right size county where we have some resources to do some stuff, but we're not so big that everybody doesn't know each other. We all know each other, and I feel really lucky to get to be part of the amazing community of people helping.
So, some people report, and they feel, and I feel this way too, that per capita, it seems like we have more organizations than other places, and maybe we just have a better synergy, like we work together and know each other a little bit more. Can you speak to that?
I don't know. I don't know for sure what is true about that. There's a group of people who do the same job that I do in all of the counties in the state, and we get together and help each other and compare notes and kind of talk about what we're all working on. And so I hear anecdotally from other counties, and I know that it's a struggle in especially smaller counties. Kitsap is like the 6th or 7th largest county, so we're kind of what I say like the biggest of the medium to small size counties, right? But we're a lot smaller than like Pierce County, Snohomish, King, all those. So I tend to kind of align myself more with the smaller county group because I feel like we have more in common with them than the really big ones. And yeah, some of them really struggle with having organizations and having capacity to do the kinds of programs. So I feel really lucky that we have so many in Kitsap. And you know, I also think we've worked really hard over the last, you know, almost 2 decades to really foster a spirit of cooperation and collaboration and partnership amongst agencies, trying to recognize that we are stronger together, right? We can do more when we work together. So maybe it is just that we have that great collaborative, cooperative relationship, and I sort of see part of my job is helping make those connections between organizations and like, hey, if you're doing that and they're doing that, you should talk to each other, and you know, so I think that might be part of it too.
Well, it's super impactful. It is super impactful.
Yeah.
So this was a great event. I think it was a raging success.
I do too. I think we have had more people come through in North Kitsap and South Kitsap than we had in the year before the pre-pandemic year.
That's a testament.
I don't have like the actual numbers yet. I have to do the tallying and stuff, but it seems like we've had more people come through. And the people who have come through have been people who were really benefit from the services. Like they've really struggled and are very happy. You know, I've seen people talking to Kitsap Legal Services and Kitsap Immigrant Assistance Services and Kitsap Mental Health and Kitsap Public. Like they may not have normally had access to that or known that those existed and that we're there to help them. So that's what makes me super happy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Anything that you want folks to know?
Well, I do want to talk just a little bit about the point in time count, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So, one of the reasons that we do the Project Connect events at this time of year is because we do it at the same time as we're doing our annual point in time count. And the point in time count, for those of you who aren't familiar, is a federal and state requirement that once a year on the 4th week of January, we go out and we try to count and survey as many people as we can find who are experiencing homelessness and who will take our survey. So it's a massive effort, and one of the ways that we try to find folks is to get them to come to us by having these Project Connect events. And so we're surveying people when they come in the door, and then also yesterday, today, and tomorrow, we're sending out teams of outreach professionals and community volunteers to try to find more people in the communities, at the food banks, at the meal sites, anywhere we can think of to send people. And so it's a massive effort. It's one of the biggest county volunteer efforts in like 1 week period to try to collect that information. And we just collect some basic information that helps let our state and federal government know how many people are experiencing homelessness during that 24-hour period or during that week, and then that determines how much funding we get for homeless programs. So it's really, really important. And you know, the better job we do at collecting those surveys, the more information we have to help us figure out what kinds of resources people need and what kinds of services are helpful, and then potentially the more funding we get to help make those things happen.
Super important.
So it's very, very important.
Very
and it is,
important.
we spend, my little team at the county government spends like a lot of like bandwidth over the last couple of months helping make this event happen with also many other amazing people, and then organizing all the point in time count. And then after today, then we start tallying all those surveys up. So then the next section of work starts where we look at all the surveys, we unduplicate them to make sure we haven't counted anybody twice. All that information gets entered into a database and tabulated and compiled, and then we submit that to the state. And then the state unduplicates it, and then they submit it to the federal government. So we're still partway through the process. But
gotcha. And then that determines how many resources come in from the federal government. So it's all of us
very
working together
important,
to get as accurate a count as possible.
Yeah, and we know it's an undercount, right? There are people that we don't find, and there are people who don't want to take our survey, and that's totally fine. So we know that it's an undercount. But the thing that I'm really excited about this year is that I think one big difference between how we've done it in the past and how we are doing it this year is that we have a lot more professional outreach staff than we've ever had before. In past point in time counts, we didn't have paid people whose job it was to go out and build relationships with people who were struggling to live outside. And now we have the Heart team, and we've got KCR Outreach, we've got the Real teams, Anton and Northwest Hospitality are doing amazing work. So all of a sudden we have professionals who know what they're doing, who can go out with our amazing community volunteers, and it just amplifies our ability to reach more people and find more people. So I'm really going to be curious to see how many more people we found this year.
That will be interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And, it's hard because we, if you wanted to have like a really scientific study, you would make sure that you did it exactly the same every year. And then you could compare year over year. Because people are always asking me, like, well, how much has homelessness increased based on the point in time count? And I'm like, we can't really look at it that way, right? We have to really just say we did it a little bit differently every year we do it a little bit differently because we keep trying to do a better and better and better job. And so the really important number there is not how did it compare to last year, but the fact that we have this number of people, at least the minimum number of people, at least this number of people are living outside, during this week in January. So
there's so many variables.
There's too many variables. The weather, how many surveyors we had, whether we did a point in time count, whether we have professional outreach survey, like all this stuff changes every year. So it's interesting information, but I don't think it's particularly useful to compare it year over year because just too many different things change. For example, last year the state requested a waiver because if you remember a year ago the pandemic was really, really bad,
right.
And we didn't do it in January, we did it in February instead. So big methodology change, right? Yeah. And then the year before we didn't do it at all because of the pandemic, and so it's really been a few years since we did it in January. So again, it's just it's interesting information to look at year over year, but it's not a very scientific way to understand how many people are experiencing homelessness.
It's data. But people need help is the bottom line.
Yeah. And we collect some other information that's really useful too. Like we ask people, where was your last permanent place that you stayed? So like, where are you from? That's really helpful. This year we're trying to ask people about whether they have animals, pets with them that they need help taking care of as well, because we want to try to understand what the need for animals and people sheltering is. We ask if people are veterans, so we ask these different questions that help us better understand what kinds of services and resources should we be thinking about trying to provide to help people. And it's the one time that we talk to a lot of people who may not be coming through our services programs, and then we ask why are you not participating in our services? What's holding you back from that, or what's preventing you from that, or what barriers have you been told exist that you can't take advantage of those resources?
And a lot of times they didn't know, they interpreted the information. The telephone game, right? Oh, you don't qualify for that.
Exactly.
So then I don't even ask for it, but actually you do. So.
And then during the pandemic, of course, so many services had to not do in-person meetings anymore, and it's hard to do things all over the phone, and some things require that you fill out forms online, and that's really hard. So we're really trying to figure out how to reduce those barriers for people so that they can access services better. That's the big part of the information we're asking also.
Last thing, will you talk a little bit about the emergency shelters?
Which one?
The severe weather shelters.
The severe weather shelters. So severe weather shelters program is an amazing program. I think we have one of the best severe weather shelter programs in the state, according to talking to my colleagues.
Wow.
Yeah, because we have 4. They're 100% volunteer run. The county provides some sort of administrative support and coordination, and the Department of Emergency Management provides sort of volunteer registration, background checks, and things like that. But the way it works is that during the severe weather shelter season, which is technically November 1st to March 31st, we monitor the weather really closely. And anytime the weather meets certain conditions, the severe weather shelters are what we call meet criteria to open. So that is things like if it's freezing overnight, if it's snowing, if there's high winds, or if there's excessive rain. So when we meet those conditions, we let our four volunteer severe weather shelters know, hey, we met criteria, and then they very quickly, within 2 or 3 hours, try to find enough volunteers to staff their severe weather shelter for that night. And then they let us know, and then we put out, with the Department of Emergency Management, we put out all kinds of notices. Hey, severe weather shelters are open tonight. Please get the word out. We put out a little text message to people who sign up, and severe weather shelters are open. And then those shelters, volunteers show up in the evening, and they put all the cots out, and they welcome people in, and it's just a safe, no questions asked, get you out of the weather, place to stay for a night. And then people leave in the morning, and then they can come back again if the severe weather shelter is open again. But it's an amazing operation to have, hundreds of volunteers throughout the county participating, signed up to help, show up to work shifts, and we think of it as, in a way, one of the most important programs we help with, because we're saving lives. We're literally saving lives, right? Because we don't want people sleeping outside in the cold, freezing temperatures, or snow, or wind, or rain. So it's super important. This building that we're in right now is one of the sites of the South Kitsap Severe Weather Shelter. There's one in Silverdale, also at the Methodist Church in Silverdale. There's one at Gateway Church in Poulsbo, and then there's one at the Village Green Center in Kingston. Severe weather shelters are activated for this weekend and into next week, we think. So anybody who is outside, we really want to make sure people know that the severe weather shelters are activated, and you should come and just have a safe, quiet, warm place to stay.
And then call 211.
Yes, thank you. And they can also call 211 to get information about them and whether the severe weather shelters are open. And you can also get a ride to the severe weather shelters. This is a new thing that we have partnered with Gather Together, Grow Together in the last couple of years.
This is year 3, I think. Right?
Is it? Yeah.
Time flies.
Well, we started doing it when some of the severe weather shelters were not able to be open during the pandemic. And so we only had 2 of them that were able to be activated. And so we were worried that if there were people in like Kingston who were used to showing up for the severe weather shelter and there was no shelter open, that they would be stuck outside. So we contracted with Gather Together, Go Together to provide rides from those shelter sites to a shelter that was open. And that was so popular and such a great resource that we kind of expanded it out and kept it going. So people can essentially reach out to the phone number on the flyer and call for a ride if they're too far away to get to a severe weather shelter site. So it's really, really important.
Encouraging other, resource providers to pass that information out, and folks will see folks and just let them know. Call 211. They have a smartphone. They can text to get the alert. I get the alerts now.
Yes.
I've been getting them for a while, but now I get them enough.
Well, and we need to let you and Stephanie know. So you're like, you guys are going to be getting calls tonight. Because people are going to.
Well, we get them now. I do a podcast and I kind of shoot it out live and just say, hey, it's open. Please get the word out. Share. Know what you're being housed. So it's just so important.
I mean, in a perfect world, we would have shelters in all those communities that operated year-round, and we wouldn't need to have this sort of severe weather shelter, only. We'd have these shelters would be open all the time. But, like I keep saying, we know what helps people. We know what we need. We know what we need to do. The problem is that we don't have enough money to do all of those things, right? If we had enough money, we could have shelters in all of our counties and all of our, in all of our communities, and we could, provide housing for everybody who needs it, and mental health treatment, and all these different things that people need. But we just don't have enough resources, and that's the problem. So we end up getting put in this really really, really difficult situation of having to decide on a daily basis who gets help and who doesn't get help, right? You know, that's when you talk about people qualifying for programs. My dream, we don't have qualifiers. You need help? Here's the place. Here's the help you need. Don't have to go fill out eligibility forms, because all those eligibility forms are about trying to decide if we're going to help you or not, right? We shouldn't have to be making that decision. We should be able to help everybody who needs help. Period. Mic drop.
Well, you're awesome. And you're tireless. You're always doing, a myriad of things all at the same time. This was a great success.
Yeah, I'm so grateful. And thank you so much for doing what you're doing. Yeah, it really is awesome to have this way of communicating out to our community that you've provided through your awesome
what was missing,
podcast.
It's like, all right, so to fill this void, and
and that's, on the similar one, that is when I talk about G2G2, occasionally people ask me, like, what is G2G2? And I say, well, let me tell you. Here's what I know. My experience with G2G2 has been that you have been an organization that has really been amazing at looking around at the community, seeing where there's a need and a gap, and jumping in and saying, we can do that. With the meal provision, with the rides, that was something that was such a struggle before you were doing that. We'd have people who are like, we know this person needs to get to an interview and a doctor's appointment. There's no, it's not economic. We can't be putting them in an Uber for that, right? But, and you saw that and you're like, we're going to do that, and you've made it happen, and it's amazing. And then same thing with the podcast, that there's a void, there's a need. We're going to do that, So I just think that is such a wonderful way to grow an organization's services, because you're really paying attention to it. You're not saying, here's what you need. You're saying, oh, this is we're noticing that there's this gap, and people are telling us this is what we need, and that's what we're going to do. So anyway, I'm a big fan.
That.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
Thank you. Tell people who you are.
Oh yeah, sorry. My name is Kirsten Jewell. I work for the Kitsap County Department of Human Services, and I manage the Housing and Homelessness Division, and we are responsible for many things, one of which is the point in time count, and we work really closely with the Kitsap Housing and Homelessness Coalition, and most of the organizations here at Project Connect are part of that coalition, so that's why we're supporting this effort to have Project Connect.
Well, we appreciate you, and for all the new viewers, typically Kirsten is on every second Wednesday with KCR and BHA, and we do a deep dive.
I'm on housing.
Yep. Which is awesome. We're actually, I was speaking with I cannot recall her name, severe weather shelter coordinator. She was wearing an orange jacket on Tuesday. Anyway, we're going to do an interview. We're going to do a tour of the severe weather shelter.
Oh, which one? Which one?
We're going to do all of them.
Oh, all four of them?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I think that'd be really cool. And I was talking with Roland earlier.
Yep, he's really involved with this one.
Yeah, and so we got to find out how they got involved, what they needed to do. Because I think there's other organizations and churches that might want to do it, but they're like, I wouldn't have an idea of how to do it. So. And
that's really, honestly, that's really how we got to have 4 severe weather shelters. We started with 1. And then other organizations and churches sort of went, oh, we don't have that in our community. That would be a really good thing to do. And they reached out to the county, and the county was like, yes, we will help you. We will help you. And here's your part of the partnership, and here's what we can do. And then helped develop that program. And we do all the training for severe weather shelters, for the big picture training. And as I said, we do volunteer we help with volunteer recruitment. We qualify volunteers. We do the background checks, all that stuff. So we can help.
Yeah, Tony Ives just did his background check.
Yeah. I'm a severe weather shelter volunteer in Kingston, and that's the story of how we have 4 amazing groups that provide this life-saving service in our community.
Yeah, well, the conduit's going to go on the road and do a tour and
very cool.
Talk to the pastors and just kind of show people and elevate and then hopefully educate and maybe get more volunteers.
We always need more volunteers. That is the biggest struggle, because especially when we have these long stretches of cold weather, every shelter has a few. We're just super amazing every time, stalwart, volunteers, and then they just get tired out. You know, it's hard to stay up overnight, right? And so we're always looking for more volunteers.
And they have families and obligations too.
Absolutely,
The shelter was open the day before Christmas Eve, and you know, folks are just constantly doing the work, and we have ice storms.
But if we, you know, but if everybody does a little bit, it's not too much, right? And we can get it done. So we would be very appreciative if you would spread the word about that and
consider it
support
done.
the program. Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much,
Well,
Marwan.
thank you.
My pleasure.
I appreciate you.
Yes.